Hi, this is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. This is episode 148, but it's also episode 4 in my drug name pronunciation series. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I am publishing one podcast episode per month on the topic of drug name pronunciations. This new series started in February 2022, and now that it's May 2022, this is the 4th episode in the pronunciation series. If you missed the first 3 episodes, you'll still understand this one. The links are in the show notes to the first 3, or go to thepharmacistvoice.com, click on the podcast tab, and search for episodes 134, 138, and 142. In my pronunciation episodes, I say the name of a drug, break it down into syllables, explain which syllable or syllables have the emphasis, reveal the source of the information, and then put the written pronunciation in the show notes so that you can see it and use it right away. There's a first time for everything, right? I'm trying something new today. My colleague, Dr. Jennifer Marquez, picked the drug names for this episode. That's right, this is new. Rather than me tell you what they are, we recorded a short interview. It's about 5.5 minutes long, and you'll hear her talk about them. She's going to introduce them today. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Marquez. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great today. I'm Dr. Jennifer Marquez, and I am a board-certified oncology pharmacist with 17 years experience in hematology and oncology. Also, I am the founder and CEO of PharmDNA LLC, a pharmacogenomics and comprehensive medication management consulting business.
What drug names do you struggle with, or have you heard other people struggle with?
Well, I will say that there are a lot of drugs in hematology and oncology that are difficult to pronounce. One of the most difficult, I would say, is a drug that is used for relapsed and refractory B-cell ALL, and the name of the drug is Inotuzumab ozogamicin.
That's a mouthful. How do you spell that?
It's Inotuzumab, and then a second word, ozogamicin.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Now, is that one that you personally struggle with, or is it one that you've heard and you feel like people just butcher it every time you hear it?
I feel like everyone butchers it when they try to say it, especially the first time, and most people probably just use the brand name instead.
Yeah, I have found that too. They just say, yeah, I just need some generic blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so what's the brand name for this one?
The brand name is Besponsa.
And how do you spell that?
Besponsa.
Besponsa. Yeah, I would probably go with the brand name on that one too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. And how do people usually figure out how to pronounce this one? Or how did you figure out how to pronounce this one?
Most drugs that I struggle with, I will actually honestly Google it and try to find some sites that have audio of drug pronunciations to help me.
Do you like the computerized pronunciations or do you like it when humans speak?
I prefer when humans speak.
Okay. Now, how do you know who's saying it right? I'm curious because this is something that, I care about.
Yes, that is an interesting question. And actually, when I was looking up some drugs recently, I did find some differing pronunciations of some of the more difficult drugs. So that doesn't help things when you get contradictory information.
Right? So how do you know which one to go with? I mean, you personally, how do you pick?
I usually just go with the way that our medical director pronounces it. And, that may or may not be accurate, but, that's usually how I decide. I may just go and ask him.
That's one way to do it. I'm not judging, but there are a lot of people, like you said, that go on YouTube and they get one or two and they end up guessing, or they go with the local pronunciation. I'm up here in Ohio. You are where?
I'm in Georgia.
You're in Georgia. So maybe even people in Georgia pronounce it different from people who are in Ohio. So that's something that we certainly don't want to make fun of people for. But one thing's for sure, we're all just trying to get it right. We're all just trying to get it right for our patients and for pharmacy practice, right?
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. I am quite certain that the majority of drug names are pronounced differently in the South, as any other word. Gotta love that Southern accent.
Yeah, hey, that's all right. I am almost up in Canada. I'm at the very westernmost edge of Lake Erie. I have both a Midwest accent and what they call a Great Lakes accent. So it's a little bit Midwest, a little bit Canadian almost. And yeah, I hear you. There are things that we pronounce differently up here. But I think we're on the same page where we're just trying to get it right for our patients. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close things out with you and I'm going to break down this drug. I'm going to have the pronunciation from the USP Dictionary Online, and I'm not going to do it while you're with me here because I don't want to bore you, but I do have to look it up in order to get the official pronunciation and where that dictionary tells me the emphasis is on the syllables. And I'm going to put that in the show notes. So I just want to say thank you for being on the Pharmacist Voice podcast and sharing a drug name that you yourself have struggled with or you've heard somebody else struggle with. So thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again to Dr. Jennifer Marquez for taking some time to share a little bit about yourself and pick the drug names for this episode. This is new. To learn a little bit more about Dr. Jennifer Marquez, visit drjennifermarquez.com. That's drjennifermarquez.com. drjennifermarquez.com. Or visit her business website, pharmdnallc.com. That's pharmdnallc.com. pharmdnallc.com. Both of those websites are in the show notes, which you can find at thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and go to episode 148. If you would like to recommend a drug name for a future pronunciation episode and be featured on the Pharmacist Voice podcast, please use the contact form or the voicemail button on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. All right, let's get started. Jennifer picked Besponsa. We'll break that brand name down first, then we'll do the generic name second. Here we go. Besponsa. 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 Besponsa has 3 syllables. Like most 3-syllable brand name drugs, this one's pretty straightforward. But let's say you just weren't sure. Where could you find the pronunciation of Besponsa? I actually had a hard time finding this one. I couldn't find the phonetic spelling of Besponsa. After all, there is no dictionary for brand name drugs. It's just a fact. So where did I look for the written pronunciation of Besponsa? There were about 5 places I checked, and then one that I actually found it. Number 1, I tried the package insert under patient counseling information. If it's going to be on a package insert, it's going to be in section 17, patient counseling information. It was not there. I also looked on the FDA's website. There is no medication guide on the FDA's website for Besponsa, so the pronunciation was not there. Number 3, there was no direct-to-consumer video on Besponsa.com. Number 4, there was no healthcare professional video on Besponsa.com. And number 5, there was no video created by Pfizer about Besponsa on YouTube, which I was kind of surprised about. I just couldn't find one. I always look for something official from the drug sponsor to make sure that I get the right intended pronunciation. That's the pronunciation that the drug company intended to be used, the intended pronunciation. Since I couldn't find it, I contacted the Media Relations Department at Pfizer. And hey, it worked. Thank you, Pfizer Media Relations. Thank you. They provided the phonetic spelling. It is Besponsa. The exact phonetic spelling that they gave me is in the show notes. Check that out. By the way, the second syllable, spon, gets the emphasis. Now, just my opinion here, Besponsa sounds a lot like the word respond. Besponsa. Respond. Respond. Besponsa. Can you hear the syllable that's emphasized? Besponsa. Besponsa. Again, the source of the pronunciation is the Pfizer Media Relations Department. Thanks again to Pfizer Media Relations. I could have called their drug information department, by the way, during normal business hours, of course, to get that information, but I got what I needed from Media Relations, so I'm all good. I trust this pronunciation. Let's move on to the generic name, which is Inotuzumab ozogamicin. This pronunciation is straight out of the USP Dictionary Online, which is also known as USAN. You can find it at usp.org. I'll put a link in the show notes. Please note that although this pronunciation is straight out of the dictionary, there are a couple of others that are pretty close. I'll get to those in just a minute. Let's tackle the USP Dictionary's pronunciation first. Inotuzumab ozogamicin is a two-word drug name. There are 5 syllables in inotuzumab and 5 syllables in ozogamicin. I'll say each part slowly so you can hear each syllable. Inotuzumab ozogamicin. Where is the primary emphasis in inotuzumab? It's TOOZ. The primary emphasis is on TOOZ. Emphasize TOOZ the most. Inotuzumab. The secondary emphasis is on in. As the syllable with the secondary emphasis, in gets almost as much emphasis as TOOZ. Inotuzumab. Hear the syllables when I emphasize them? Inotuzumab. Where is the emphasis in ozogamicin? It's on my. The primary emphasis is on my. Emphasize my the most. The secondary emphasis is on o. As the syllable with the secondary emphasis, o gets almost as much emphasis as my. Ozogamicin. Hear the syllables that are emphasized? Ozogamicin. You might wonder, Kim, how do I know which syllable gets emphasized? Well, it's all in the USP Dictionary Online. It breaks down the syllables and it indicates which syllable or syllables have the emphasis. It is a very handy reference, and I highly recommend it. No, I do not get any compensation whatsoever from them. I just really love that reference. And since we're on the topic of the USP Dictionary Online, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to the USP Legal Department for permission to use written pronunciations from the USP Dictionary Online in my podcast show notes and in my YouTube videos. If you are unfamiliar with the USP Dictionary Online, it is a subscription-based resource. Yes, I pay to get access to it. To learn more, visit usp.org and look for the USP Dictionary Online. It is also marked as the USAN, USAN, USAN. There's a link in the show notes. The written pronunciation for inotuzumab ozogamicin is in the show notes too. One of the trickiest things about pronouncing drug names is the vowels. When I looked up inotuzumab on YouTube, I got more than one pronunciation. That is not a surprise, and I just want to share 2 of those with you. 2 examples are inotuzumab and inotuzumab. Although these are not the official dictionary pronunciations, they're not in the USP Dictionary Online like this, I would certainly recognize these as generic Besponsa. Wouldn't you? Yeah. Listen, there's a lot of misinformation online. And the purpose of these pronunciation episodes is not to establish myself as the be-all, end-all. It's to provide the intended pronunciations from reliable sources. Intended pronunciations from reliable sources. If it's a brand name drug, I want to get the pronunciation from the sponsor. And if it's a generic drug name, I want to get it from the USP Dictionary Online. I want you to feel confident saying drug names and less frustrated learning them. I hope these pronunciation episodes help. Let's wrap this up. Our drug names today were Besponsa and Inotuzumab ozogamicin. I want to say thank you one more time to Dr. Jennifer Marquez for picking those. This has been fun. This was different from my first 3 episodes. If you are interested in picking the drug names for a future pronunciation episode or being featured on the Pharmacist's Voice podcast like Dr. Jennifer Marquez was, just visit me at thepharmacistvoice.com and either send me a message using my contact form or click on the voicemail button and leave me a message. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for listening to episode 148 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. You'll find links to the USP Dictionary Online, Besponsa, Dr. Jennifer Marquez's websites and LinkedIn profile, and more in those show notes. If you know someone who would like this episode or needs to hear it, please share it with them. And subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist's Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thank you again for listening.